Well, with everything heating up and Ukraine throwing drone strikes at Moscow, we got to ask that question. Is the draft coming back? Before we get started on this, guys, I want you to know right now that I've been preoccupied. I've actually not been posting much on John Claymore either, not the past week and a half. I've had a lot of things going on here, including a doctor's appointment, and I took yesterday to kind of think about things, what I was going to do as far as this. It's about my foot is what it is. Apparently some things are going on there that it's not broken or anything like that right there, but let's just say it could be a big time annoyance going on in the future. But I'll talk more about that at the end when I give you guys some updates, because obviously some military and movie reviews are due, and I've already got the first two stories that are actually coming back out. Don't worry, we're not going to have a copyright issue that we had with the Zulu thing, which, by the way, we'll be doing again here soon. But I want to go ahead and talk about this because obviously military.com, they had this piece out on a possibility of a draft. Now, guys, there's a lot of conflicting stuff here. A lot of people out there with a lot of takes out there. One in particular was Tim Pool. We'll get to him here in a second on how exactly it is that a draft actually works and why a draft is actually implemented. Now, let me go ahead and say this first. The reason why a draft existed at one time was so that way they could pull men in case of a war, in case of a conflict that would require a lot of manpower. Obviously, World War I is an example. World War II was probably our largest draft. Korea, then eventually Vietnam, and then I want to say it was 1971 or 1972. Richard Nixon was able to get rid of the draft, going with a full volunteer military. Now, me personally, I favor an all volunteer military. And I think that a draft should be done at a limited capacity, or what should actually happen is that guys who are still on their 4-year inactive reserve, or their whatever reserve status is as far as when they leave active duty, I think they should be the first ones called back in, especially if they're not employed or have a good job at the time. Bring them back in, do a nice little 6-week refresher course or a nice 10-week refresher course, make sure that they're up to snuff, give them a job when they're in. It doesn't have to be front line. You can obviously pick a guy who say was a We'll say a guy who was former infantry, maybe his knee is jacked up or whatnot, give him a job working like supply or something like that there, and just transfer somebody from supply, especially if you're in the Marine Corps because you're Rothman first. Same thing with the Army too, and transfer them to a much more combat-related MOS. Now, the concerns that we're having right now is that guys don't want to join the military, which, by the way, I even did a video a long time ago about this. I may have pulled it down, I'm not sure, because obviously before we shift into the brand new content, you want to kind of remove some of the older takes. And the thing is, one of the things I said was that we need to be able to make it the availability for men to go back into the military more likely. You know, you need to be able to make it a little bit easier, because a lot of times guys would get, especially during the Obama economy, they'd be out 2 or 3 years, couldn't find stable work, and next thing you know, they would try to go back in. I know this because I was one of those guys who did that, and the process to get back in the military was actually much harder. One of the things you got to worry about is the possibility of losing your VA benefits. And I said that in that video, you should not lose your VA benefits. As a matter of fact, if you've got combat action ribbon, they should go ahead and start setting it for 100% anyway, especially if they know that they're not going to pull you back in. What I'm talking about is guys who maybe have a small issue, you know, knee issue, maybe a small back issue. You're at like 40% total, maybe 50%. Nothing post-traumatic stress related or disorder related, even though I do think you should be able to find a job for guys who are already at 100%. If they want to join back in, maybe as an advisor, as a trainer, something like that, you're probably not going to go to the field or combat. It depends on the situation. I personally don't like the draft because you're bringing in a lot of men who did not volunteer and may not want to actually serve. But still, though, in some cases, these things can be viewed as necessary. But you do have selective service, which I do, in fact, agree with. Normally, you'd think they would actually pull from that area there. But we do have a problem, and that problem right there is what we're about to discuss right now. So let me go ahead and roll this first clip for you guys. We're going to come back on the other side, and we're going to discuss the likelihood of it actually
that guy's
happening.
lifting. Well, here's the breaking news. Moscow got hit again. The New York Times reporting Russia-Ukraine war drone again hits a Moscow building housing Russian ministries. This is war expanding into Russia, as it has been, but now more so. This doesn't end here. These drone attacks are not simply Ukraine using their military prowess. Russia is fully aware that this is NATO versus Russia. And in fact, it may expand to NATO versus BRICS. In which case, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to World War III, should it come to that point. Then we will absolutely get a military draft. No question, none. Let me show you the historical context too as we get through this story. But absolutely, if it comes to World War III, yeah, they're going to pull in everybody. And it's going to be interesting. Now, before it even gets to that point, the military draft has to be in effect. So now we're starting to see more and more calls for a draft. And with Joe Biden calling in the ready reserves and selected reserves, it seems increasing.
Let me go ahead and say this now. I'm using Tim because Tim oftentimes reports a lot of these stories, and he's not military. He's not ex-military or anything like that. I am. Did my time. Got out in 2007. And Tim obviously doesn't know as much about this. I mean, he's obviously a relatively smart guy if you actually listen to the guy. He does say some very, very crazy things that just doesn't really have a whole lot of common sense in it. But then again, he always finds a way to research and finds the actual answer to it. And sometimes he even comes back to that take later on, revisits this, and kind of does a bit of a 180 on it, kind of correcting himself. But then again, sometimes he actually does. If you watch Tim, you guys probably know what I'm talking about. And he actually did do a video kind of confirming what I'm about to say here in a second. I'll link it in the description box for you. Tim bringing this up, especially everything going on right now, makes me think that the federal government, or at least our federal government as it sits right now, may not have a choice but to actually implement a draft. But I think they would go through the selective service thing first before they actually went to the draft. Now, I've already given you guys my thoughts on the war in Ukraine. I personally think it's two guys. Basically, the analogy I love to use is that it's two turds fighting to be a king turd on top of a crap mountain. I honestly don't care for Putin, and I really truly don't care for Zelensky. I think we've given too much money to Zelensky. I think we've given him way too much. And I think for the most part it is a European war that NATO needs to fight, and I don't think we need to get involved directly or indirectly at this point in time, especially given the fact that Ukraine's recent assault did not go the way they wanted to go. The gains were not exactly what we call extraordinary. They were very, very minimal. And they even got pushed back on a lot of fronts. And Russia, of course, has repushed the effort, which tells me that Ukraine's about to be once again on the defensive, and they're not going to be as strong as a position as what they were before. And seeing how it is that we are SJWing our military and have been SJWing our military, a lot of people think this is finally starting to backfire, like I felt that it eventually would. But now everybody thinks that the military is a joke. So let me ask you a question. Where do you pull these troops from? Where do you pull these young men from? Obviously, you're going to be looking 18 to 25. Now, there was this study that came out recently showing that a lot of men, young men aged 17 to 18, are starting to lean conservative. Now, I've talked about this in previous videos on Claymore, that conservative households have 2 kids per one liberal household, meaning that conservatives tend to have more kids. Yes, I'm going political with this because obviously it's normally the working class and the working class kids that end up going to war, which made me wonder why Tim would have this take.
This guy at the Unified Command says, you, to Tom Cruise, are going on the front line, and you will have a camera, and you will film these new exosuits in action, and you will sell this war. And he's like, I'm not a fighter. I can't do that. And they're like, too effing bad. Great movie, by the way. It's a lot of fun. It's like sci-fi action Groundhog Day. And I could imagine that happening to someone like Harry Sisson. These guys want to go on Twitter and scream about all the good things Democrats are doing. Yeah, okay. I wonder what's going to happen, good sir, when your peers are drafted into the military for Joe Biden's war, for the deep state's war in Ukraine. Because it ain't Trump who wants war in Ukraine. What do you think they're going to say to you when they're like, you sold this? I wonder what they're going to say when they're on the front lines in Kharkov or something. And they're wondering why it is that at 19 years old, they're about to die in Ukraine. Because most people, you don't know. Unless you can really sell it. Here's military.com. It's time to change how our country fills the ranks of our military. Since 1775, our nation has used a combination of volunteers and draftees to meet our national defense. Considering it costs about $15,000 to recruit each new member, the overall cost each year exceeds $2 billion. You want to know why this will be catastrophic? I'll show you. It's right here. This is it. Emma, The Calling, GoArmy.com. Emma Malone Lord. Her wonderful recruiting commercial about her 2 moms at Pride. I will not fight. I will not, nor will many others, lay their lives down for what we see at these Pride events. I got no beef with a lady with 2 moms, by all means. I think it's a great story. You grew up, you lived a good life, you fought, She says that she was a typical sorority girl stereotype, but she wanted to give back and find her own adventure. And I respect that tremendously. But here's the point I'm making. This commercial shows people celebrating at Pride. The problem? Today's standards, when we look at Pride, sexual gratuitous activity, grooming events, the targeting of children, sexually explicit graphic materials being given to children. Yeah, sorry, wrong message. If you tried to force me to fight for that, ain't gonna work. Nah, I'm sorry. You'd have to lock me up. And I'm sure many young people today, as we're learning that young men are skewing conservative, probably feel the same. Not one of these young guys wants to go and die so that some creepo pedo can dance nude wearing a Bugs Bunny mask hopping down the street.
Now, guys, in the video that I'm going to be leaving in the description box for you guys, Tim kind of reversed this take, basically saying that those who come from suburban families are more likely to be left-leaning, which is actually true. If you go to BreadTube and you go to the left-leaning streamers, you will see the vast majority of these people come from very, very blue areas. Their families have got the money to keep their kids from going. They got college exemptions even when the draft was going on during the Vietnam War. They're more than likely not going to be the ones to go fight. What they're going to do is they're going to take poor kids, poor minority kids, and they'll take poor working class kids, and they'll try to stick them at the front. Now, like I said before, Tim did do a bit of a reversal on this in the video that he released following up on a separate issue in a New York Times article, which I'll try to link. It's a very weird article. Now that the left, people on the left are asking the question if they're actually like the bad guys in the situation, which newsflash, they kind of sort of are in this situation. But still at the same time, though, you got to ask yourself a question. Would they actually send these college-exempt kids to go fight? I don't think they would. I think that these people would actually have some form of benefits. However, I also think that it may add to the discontent, assuming that these guys do get pulled into combat and they come back home, and next thing you know, you look at the people who actually tried to influence you. Because let's be honest, a lot of these 18-year-olds to 25-year-olds, they've been watching BreadTube for a very, very long time. They're already very anti-military, very anti anything involving the military at all, and they're also very anti-masculinity, which also makes me wonder what's going to happen if they are pulled in. Paul, Claymore, John, did you just not say that they would pull these kids from conservative households? Yes, I did say that. However, here's the thing about what I'm trying to say. A lot of those kids that are going to be pulled from conservative households have been influenced by BreadTube already. They typically tend to become conservative a little bit later in life when they've actually lived some life and they actually see how the world begins to work. So you're talking about a lot of 18 to 25-year-old young men who are actually working jobs, seeing how the world works, seeing that they've already been lied to by those on BreadTube, and then they go in there. It breeds a lot of it breeds a lot of resentment when they come back home. When I joined the Marine Corps in 2003 and got out in 2007, I think I would go to my hometown every weekend because I didn't live very, very far away from Camp Lejeune because I'm from the same area near it. And I would typically go to watering holes, whatnot. And sometimes people, and this guy's obviously in the military, he's fighting for us, this, that, and you'll get some people who actually have some absolute discontent towards you. But not that bad, okay? Not to the point where people want to actually fist fight with you or anything like that. However, in this heightened environment, I am a little bit concerned that a lot of these guys would come back and see that the world is not exactly what BreadTubers said that it was. That rather concerns me to a certain degree, especially given the fact that they've been pumped with all this, you're toxic for being a male. You already had this hard time getting guys to join the military. It makes me wonder what kind of effects could occur after the draft. Now, I understand that drafts may be necessary in this case if it goes fully World War III, which I got a bad feeling it will in the next 5 years or so, probably a lot sooner. But it just makes me wonder what we're actually doing here. You see, we need to drop the social justice warrior thing. You see, my idea would be this right here. Instead of implementing a draft, just stop sending money to Ukraine altogether. Sit back and actually try to reform the military and make it to where people do, in fact, want to join. And when the actual training doctrine has been fixed and all the SJW nonsense has been pulled out, then if things get hot, then start pulling guys back in. Not to mention all the clot shot crap that's happened over the past few years and guys getting removed anyways and being told they couldn't join. And, of course, you had the situation in North Korea where you had a guy actually try to hop the DMZ. Military doesn't exactly look attractive right now, so you're already kind of embedding the way the military practices are going right now. Nobody wants to join, so what are you expecting in the draft? You're going to get a lot of draft dodgers. You're going to get a lot of guys who refuse to join, and when they're there, they could have been infected so much by leftist propaganda, especially on BreadTube, that they may actually screw the military up from within much, much further than it already is. Look, guys, let's be honest. Once you go through boot camp, I mean, look, you are exactly what you are. You're a soldier, you're a Marine, you're whatever. But let's be honest, though. How many guys began to lose some of that once they left boot camp? I'm just throwing that out there. Just some possible risk that we could be looking at, especially given the fact that we also have a country full of obese people, people who are on soy and all kinds of crap, things that, quite frankly, are destroying their masculinity. I want to say there was a test done a while back where 80-year-old men right now actually have more testosterone than those in their early 20s. That's the type of crisis that we're facing. Guys, I want to end the video there. I may follow back up on this one day next week. The two videos that I plan on doing are one on the USS Forrestal incident and, of course, the First Blood book from the film. Those videos should be out next week. I apologize for not getting them out a lot sooner, but like I said, it's been kind of a wonky week. A lot of things happened that I did not expect to occur, but we're going to be back on the platform again full-time every other day, every couple of days, releasing one, probably 3 videos a week, 2-3 videos a week total. And, of course, those movie reviews, which, of course, are going to be in video essay form, they will be out soon as well. Make sure you guys stick around for those. Please hit that like button. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Please also hit the notifications bell. Leave a comment in the comment section. I would love to get you guys' thoughts on this. And I'll see you guys later.